Victorians had no electricity or modern heating, yet they survived the brutally cold winters. Their homes were drafty, and the cold was relentless, so staying warm took effort and desperation. But how did they manage it? It all begins with their most trusted heat source, coal fires. I want you to picture this as vividly as possible. You walk into a Victorian home in January, and the first thing that hits you isn't warmth, it's the smell. That thick, earthy, slightly metallic scent of coal burning in an open grate. It wraps around you, clings to your clothes, settles into your hair. Everything about these fires was sensory. You'd hear the shovel scraping against the coal scuttle. You'd watch sparks snap upward like tiny fireflies. You'd feel that dry, almost harsh heat on your skin, heating your front while your back froze. Because a coal fire didn't heat a room evenly, it heated whatever was directly in front of it. If you stepped 2 feet to the right, you were cold again. The context is even crazier. Coal wasn't just another fuel, it was the engine of an entire empire. Britain mined more than 120 million tons of it a year, and wealthy families burned it like it was endless. Some estates used 30 tons of coal a day just to stay warm. Imagine a home so big and so cold that you needed entire underground tunnels, actual tunnels, to move coal from one wing to another. These weren't cozy cottages, they were stone refrigerators fighting against the winter with sheer force. Now compare that to your life. One thermostat, one tap, one button. Heat just appears. You don't have to feed it. You don't have to shovel anything. You don't have to breathe in smoke or scrub soot off your walls. Let me ask you something. Do you think you could handle living in a house where the fire goes out if you don't constantly tend it? Because that was reality. Now imagine the second method, cast iron stoves. You may picture them as quaint or aesthetic, but I want you to feel what it was actually like to depend on one. You open the stove door and a wave of heat bursts out so strong it makes your eyes water. You hear the soft roar of burning wood, the clink of iron expanding with heat, the sizzle of sap trapped inside logs. That stove wasn't a decoration, it was a survival machine. Its context is fascinating. Victorian kitchens were the warmest places in the entire home, so warm that people practically lived there during winter. Children did their homework on the kitchen table. Servants tried to stay close without being scolded. Families dragged chairs near the hearth just to keep feeling in their hands. If you were poor, the kitchen wasn't just the heart of the home, it was the only warm room in the house. Imagine that contrast to today. You can walk into any room and expect it to be warm, but in the Victorian era, stepping out of the kitchen felt like walking into another season entirely. Let me ask you something. If your entire house was freezing except for one room, which room would you choose to live in all winter? Now picture something smaller, more intimate, yet just as essential. The heavy curtains Victorians treated almost like armor. This isn't your modern polyester drapery. I want you to feel the weight of Victorian winter curtains. Thick velvet, dense wool, layers upon layers sewn together until the fabric was so heavy you needed both hands to pull it across the window. And there's a sensory detail I want you to imagine clearly. When you touch these curtains, they were cold on the outside and warm on the inside. They literally trapped heat like a wall, and the moment you opened them, even an inch, you felt that icy draft brush against your skin like a whisper. The context behind this is incredible, and it's that Victorian homes were full of drafts. Windows leaked cold air constantly. Walls weren't insulated. Stone floors sucked heat away from your feet. Curtains weren't just decoration, they were technology. They were insulation. Compare that to modern double-glazed windows, thermal lining, central heating. Your home protects you without asking for anything in return. But imagine standing beside the Victorian window at night, hearing the wind slip through the gaps, feeling it crawl across your neck like a cold finger. Let me ask you, would you have trusted a curtain to keep your entire room warm? Now let's talk about something personal, something you actually carried on your body, and that is layers of winter clothing. And this is not about the layers, it's about the fact that you wore more weight. Imagine putting on a wool chemise that scratched your skin, then a flannel petticoat, then another, then your dress, then your cloak. By the time you were finished, it felt like you were carrying a small child on your body. Women sometimes wore 40 pounds of winter clothing. Imagine trying to walk, move, breathe with that much fabric pressing against you. Here's the context. You've never thought about Victorian homes averaged around 40-50 degrees inside. That's refrigerator temperature. Your bones felt cold from the inside. Your breath misted in your own living room. Without layers, you wouldn't just be cold, you'd be in danger. But compare that to now. If your house hit 50 degrees, you'd panic, grab your phone, check the thermostat, and call a technician. A Victorian wouldn't even flinch. So here's a question for you. What's the coldest indoor temperature you've ever actually experienced? And how did your body react? Finally, let's step into the thing every Victorian feared losing: a warm bed. I want you to feel this moment. It's late, you're exhausted. The entire upstairs is freezing because fires rarely burned in bedrooms. You slide your hand under the blanket, and the sheets feel like ice. Not cold, ice. Your skin flinches, your muscles tighten, you suck in a breath. Victorians invented the bed warmer, a copper pan, a long wooden handle, burning charcoal inside. And the moment you slid it between the sheets, you heard this soft crackle, the sound of heat pushing away the cold. But you also smelled something sharp, that faint warning scent of heated metal and charcoal together. A smell that meant warmth, but also risk. One wrong move and the sheets could ignite. Now compare that to your electric blanket, your hot water bottle, your climate control. Today, warming your bed is effortless and safe. Back then, it was a balance between comfort and danger. Let me ask you this. Would you be willing to slide a burning pan of charcoal under your sheets just to feel warm? But even the bed warmers weren't the craziest part, because if you really want to understand how Victorians kept themselves warm, you need to picture this next scene clearly. A heated brick wrapped in flannel. Yes, an actual brick. Picture it being pulled from the hearth, still radiating that deep, steady heat that only stone can hold. Someone wraps it in thick cloth, ties the fabric tight, and carries it upstairs like a fragile treasure. When you slide it under the covers, the heat blooms slowly, never harsh, never sudden, just a long, patient warmth that spreads through the mattress like a secret. That brick could keep the center of your bed warm for hours, and the context behind it reveals everything about Victorian life. It wasn't about comfort, it was about survival. Bedroom temperatures dropped so low that your breath formed tiny clouds, water froze in basins, even ink stiffened. So these bricks weren't conveniences, they were lifelines. Compare that to your world right now. Your bed is warm before you even climb in. You expect it, you take it for granted. But imagine needing a brick to keep your toes from going numb. Let me ask you something. If your house lost heat tonight and the temperature dropped to freezing, what old school method do you think you'd trust most? Now let's move to something even more physical, the infamous Victorian draft. If you've never lived in a drafty home, it's hard to understand what it does to your body. But imagine this, you're sitting in a parlor with a fire blazing, and yet your legs feel cold. A thin ribbon of icy air snakes across the floor. You don't see it. You only feel it drifting past your ankles like a whisper. That was daily life. Victorian homes leaked cold from every direction, floorboards, window frames, chimneys and doors. So they invented one of the simplest, most sensory-heavy solutions you can imagine, the draft excluder. I want you to picture your hands pressing against a long fabric tube stuffed tightly with sawdust, sand, rags, or even dried peas. You tuck it against the bottom of the door, and instantly the air stops flowing. Silence, stillness, the warmth begins to settle. These weren't decorative, they were essential, and without them, a room could lose nearly all its trapped heat within minutes. Now look at your life. Your windows are sealed, your doors lock tight. You don't feel wind slipping across your floors. Let me ask you, could you imagine going through an entire winter fighting cold air that literally crawled into your home every hour of every day? Here's another vignette I want you to feel deeply: the nighttime routine. Before bed, you didn't just undress, you prepared. You slipped into a flannel nightgown, thick, scratchy, and heavy. You tied on a nightcap because heat escapes from your head faster than anywhere else. You pulled on wool socks, and then, wrapped in all those layers, you crawled beneath blankets that weighed almost as much as your clothes. But the sensory detail that matters most is the moment your body met that cold. You know, that sharp jolt you feel when you sit on a cold car seat. Now multiply it. Victorian sheets could chill you straight to the bone. It took actual minutes for your body heat to warm the space around you. You didn't fall asleep right away. You acclimated. The context makes it even more intense. Beds often had 4, 5, even 6 separate layers: blankets, quilts, counterpanes, feather beds, bolsters. The goal wasn't luxury, it was insulation. You weren't sleeping in a bed, you were sleeping under a barrier designed to trap every ounce of heat your body produced through the night. Now compare that to your reality. Your bedroom is as warm as any other room. Your sheets aren't ice cold. Your blankets aren't heavy enough to leave lines on your skin. But imagine this. If you had to sleep in a room where the temperature hovered just above freezing, how many layers would it take before you finally felt comfortable? Now, let's step away from the bedroom and into the morning. Imagine waking up and seeing your own breath the moment you open your mouth. Imagine the floorboards biting at your feet like frost itself is rising from beneath you. To a Victorian, morning warmth had to be rebuilt from scratch. You wrapped yourself in a dressing gown, long, thick, often quilted, like a blanket you could walk in. You moved quickly. You breathed smoke-flavored air from the rekindled fire. You warmed your hands over a kettle heating on the stove. And here's the strange, almost poetic truth. The body adapted. People became experts at managing their internal temperature. They learned how to breathe more slowly so the cold stung less. They kept their core warm so their fingers didn't go numb. They layered not for fashion, but to create pockets of air between fabrics that trapped body heat better than any modern fiber. Now compare that with your body's instincts. You feel cold for 30 seconds and immediately reach for a heater, a hoodie, a warm drink. Victorians had none of that. So let me ask you this. Do you think your body could actually adapt to a Victorian winter, or have you grown too used to warmth on demand? Now let me take you somewhere unexpected, something you've probably never imagined but absolutely would feel if you were living in that era. And that is the smell of winter inside a house, not outside, inside. Every home had its own winter scent. Coal, wool, damp air, wet boots drying near the fire, iron warming on the stove. Sometimes even a faint metallic smell from heated bed warmers or soapstone foot warmers resting by the hearth. That smell wasn't unpleasant. It was survival. It was comfort. It told you that the fire was lit, the blankets were aired, the curtains were drawn, and you were safe from the cold outside. Now here's the context most people overlook. Victorian warmth wasn't a temperature. It was an atmosphere, a feeling, a ritual. Today, warmth is digital, silent, invisible. But in the Victorian era, warmth was work, and every part of your home reminded you of that effort. Compare that to your life now. If someone asked you, what does warmth smell like in your home? Would you even have an answer? Now, to really understand how Victorians kept warm, you need to step into one of the most underrated winter rituals of the era, the evening gathering around the hearth. And I want you to picture this moment with absolute clarity. The fire crackles, the shadows dance across the wallpaper, and everyone positions themselves at just the right angle to soak up the heat. It wasn't random, there were rules. You learned your spot in the hierarchy of warmth. You'd feel the sensation instantly, your face getting hot while your spine stays cold, your legs warming unevenly, one side of your body practically roasting while the other side still feels like it's trapped outside in the frost. And that odd imbalance was normal. That's what radiant heat does when it's your only source. Here's the context behind that picture. Heat didn't fill the room. It radiated in straight lines. If you weren't directly in front of the fire, you weren't warm. That's why Victorian furniture arrangements look so strange to modern eyes. Everything, chairs, ottomans, stools, faced the fire. The room didn't matter, the fire did. Now compare that to your life. You can sit anywhere. You can lounge on the couch. You don't need to angle your body like a plant reaching toward the sun. But imagine this. What if you could only stay warm by physically facing the exact same spot every single night? Would your evenings look different? Now let's go deeper into something far more physical, far more intimate, and far more revealing about how Victorians understood warmth, and that is layering with purpose. You've layered clothes before. A sweater, a jacket, maybe a scarf, but Victorians layered with strategy. They understood their own body heat better than most people today. When you put on a flannel petticoat, you weren't just covering your legs, you were trapping warm air. When you added a second or third, you were building a microclimate around yourself. I want you to feel that weight for a moment. Imagine bending down and feeling the fabric pull against your waist. Imagine the texture of wool rubbing against wool, creating friction and warmth. Imagine how snug your core feels when the heat builds inside all those layers and refuses to escape. Now consider the context. Victorian homes were so cold that your own body was your primary heating system. Everything you wore was designed to help your internal temperature stay stable. Petticoats, chemises, flannels, cloaks. These weren't fashion choices. They were thermal engineering. Compare that to the fleece hoodie you throw on without a second thought, to your synthetic fibers, to the warmth your clothes provide without weighing much at all. If you had to dress in 30 to 40 pounds of winter clothing just to feel comfortable, how long before you got tired of carrying that weight? Now let's step into a different sensory memory, a different kind of warmth, the kind that touches your hands, your lap, your feet. Picture this: you're sitting near the fire and someone hands you a porcelain foot warmer, smooth, heavy, filled with hot water. You lift it onto your lap and the heat spreads slowly through your thighs, then downward into your legs. It feels like a gentle pulse, deep and steady. Victorians carried foot warmers everywhere, on trains, inside carriages, even into church pews, and every time they used one, they felt that comforting contrast between the cold air around them and the rising warmth beneath their clothes. Sometimes these warmers were metal, sometimes ceramic, sometimes even soapstone. The context behind this is almost tender. Warmth wasn't a background feature of life. It was something you held on to, something you guarded, something you brought with you, like a companion. Today, warmth is just there. You don't hold it, you don't cradle it, you don't carry it from place to place. But let me ask you, if you lived in a world where your feet were always cold, would you treasure a simple warm stone the same way Victorians did? Now let's go outside for a moment, not to freeze but to understand. Imagine stepping out into a Victorian winter street. The air hits your lungs like shards of ice. The sky is grey, heavy and damp, the kind of cold that feels wet, like it's sinking into your bones. Your boots crunch against frost. Your breath forms thick clouds. The world feels slower, quieter, sharper. That's the sensory reality. But here's the context. Most people didn't escape that cold. Not immediately, not comfortably. When you stepped indoors, you didn't feel instant warmth. You felt a slight reduction in the cold. It was a gradient, not a switch. Compare that to the shock your body feels when you walk from a freezing street into a warm building today. The sudden rush of heat, the sting in your cheeks. Victorians never felt that. Their bodies transitioned slowly from freezing to slightly less freezing to comfortable. If you stand right here, do you think you could handle that kind of winter? Or has modern heating spoiled you? Now let's move back inside to one of the most brilliant Victorian inventions you've probably never thought about: interior room zoning. You know how you walk freely from room to room without losing heat? The Victorians couldn't. Heat leaked out like water through a sieve, so they created a simple solution. Don't heat the whole house. Heat 1 or 2 rooms. Seal the rest. Picture yourself pulling thick curtains across doorways. Portières, they called them. They weren't decorative, they were shields. When the fabric fell, you felt the temperature shift. The warm room behind you stayed warm. The cold hallway in front of you stayed cold. It was a physical barrier you could feel on your face. Here's the context that makes it even more fascinating. Victorian homes weren't full of open spaces and wide hallways like modern homes. They were divided into smaller rooms because small spaces trap heat better. Now compare that to your open concept living room, your high ceilings, your wide entrances. Warmth isn't something you're trying to trap anymore. It's something you expect to fill every corner of every space. Let me ask you, if you had to choose only one room in your entire home to heat all winter, which room would it be? Now let me take you to one last image from this era. A scent, a sound, a sensation that defined every Victorian winter night. The fire dies down. The last shovel of coal has been tossed in. The mantel clock ticks. The flames shrink. The embers glow red like tiny stars at the bottom of the grate. The room grows still. Every shadow deepens, and you feel the temperature begin to drop. Not suddenly, but steadily, like the cold is reclaiming its territory. You pull your blanket tighter around your shoulders. You feel your toes searching for warmth. You move closer to what's left of the fire, and you understand something the Victorians lived with every single day. Warmth was temporary. Unless you fought for it, it disappeared. Now compare that to your home. Your heat doesn't fade at midnight. Your fire doesn't demand tending. Your warmth doesn't vanish unless something breaks. Let me ask you, do you think we've lost a certain kind of awareness, a certain respect for warmth because we no longer have to earn it? Interestingly, one of the most surprising sources of warmth in Victorian winters was the human body itself. Not just your own body, but the collective warmth of people gathered gathered together. Because in a world before modern heating, togetherness wasn't just emotional, it was thermodynamic. Picture this, a family sitting close on a sofa, a servant passing nearby, children huddling at their mother's side. Not because they were affectionate, though they often were, but because the shared warmth mattered. When several bodies exhaled warm air into a room, the temperature actually changed, slowly, subtly, but undeniably. Now I want you to feel that sensory detail, the soft warmth rising from people's skin, the shared breath, the sound of crackling coal, a room filled with small pockets of heat, created simply by proximity. The context behind this might surprise you. Victorian social customs actually shifted in winter. People gathered more. They stayed in smaller rooms. They closed parlors that were too large to heat. They kept company not out of boredom or politeness, but because humans are, quite literally, heaters. Compare that to your life today. You don't need another person's body heat. You don't rely on proximity for survival. You can sit alone in a warm room with no effort. Now imagine this. If your source of warmth required other human beings, how would that change the way you interacted with the people around you? There is one very overlooked Victorian winter habit, an adaptation so practical that people in Northern Europe used it for centuries, and that's the seasonal hibernation, where people slept for a longer time, much longer. Imagine this. Winter hits. Your home is cold. Your fuel supply is limited. Your body consumes energy just trying to stay warm. So what do? You sleep. You go to bed early. Sometimes as soon as the sun sets. You stay in bed longer than usual. You let your blankets do the work. And in that cocoon of warmth, your energy stays conserved. The context here is profound. The people weren't lazy. They weren't idle. They were conserving body heat in the most efficient way possible. Staying awake meant staying cold. Being still under layers meant staying alive. Now compare that to how you sleep today. You don't worry about burning too many calories just to get through the night. You don't pace your sleep according to the weather. You just sleep. Now ask yourself, if you had to sleep longer in winter just to maintain warmth, what parts of your life would change? For the poor people in this era, Victorian winter was harsher, colder, and more desperate than anything you've heard so far. That's because if you want to understand warmth, you need to understand its absence. Picture a single-room tenement. One stove, one pot, one pan. The air feels damp, not warm. The walls sweat with condensation. You hear wind whistling through cracks in the brickwork. The floorboards are bare. The fire is small. You rub your hands together not just to warm them, but to keep the blood moving. The sensory detail here is raw. The sting of cold air inside your nose. The ache in your fingertips. The sharp smell of kerosene or low-quality coal. The sound of someone coughing in the corner. The slight warmth of a body lying next to you on a mattress stuffed with straw. The context makes it harsher. The poor used heat-efficient stoves not for comfort, but for survival. Stoves that doubled as cookers, heaters, and sometimes even washing stations. They gathered around that single source like planets around the sun. Now compare that to your world. Even if your power goes out, you have blankets, emergency systems, and warm clothing. You don't worry that a cold night might make you sick, or worse. So let me ask you, if you lived in a room where the temperature never rose above 45 degrees, what would you cling to for warmth? The story is a little different for people on the other extreme, the wealthy homes, because their version of warmth created its own sensory universe. Picture a grand estate in midwinter, thick carpets, heavy velvet drapes, marble halls echoing with footsteps, dozens of fireplaces blazing, servants carrying fuel through underground corridors, the crack of coal being shoveled, the faint metallic ring of iron tools striking stone, the glow of firelight flickering off polished brass fenders. The sensory detail is spectacular, the soft heat radiating from a roaring fire, the warm scent of beeswax polish, the muffled feel of carpets underfoot, the bright glow reflecting off gilded mirrors, a warmth that feels luxurious, intentional, and powerful. The context behind it is almost unbelievable. An estate could burn tens of tons of coal a day. Entire teams of workers existed solely to maintain the fires. Wealth didn't just mean comfort, it meant warmth as a display of status. The more heat you could sustain, the higher your social standing. Now compare that to modern life. Wealth today buys comfort, yes, but you don't measure it by how many fires you can afford to burn at once. Heat is invisible now, silent, private. But imagine if your home's warmth was something everyone could see, smell, and feel. Would that change the way you think about luxury? One of the most important vignettes of this world is the winter night, not not inside, outside. Picture walking through a Victorian street at midnight on a winter's night. The lamps flicker weakly. The cobblestones are slick with frost. Your breath forms thick clouds around your face. The houses are dark except for faint slits of firelight behind curtains. Streets are quiet. Cold presses against you like a physical weight, and every window you pass is a reminder that warmth is personal, private, and hard-earned. The sensory detail is sharp. The crunch of frost beneath your boots, the distant sound of a carriage wheel, the glow of gaslight drifting through the fog, the scent of coal smoke hanging low in the air like a blanket. The context behind this is profound. Winter wasn't a season, it was a force. It shaped routines, clothing, architecture, and social life. And every method Victorians used to stay warm wasn't just technology, it was culture, it was an identity. Now compare that to your world. You walk into warmth without thinking. You expect comfort. You live in a reality where cold is temporary and warmth is guaranteed. But let me ask you this question. If you lived in a world where every degree of warmth was earned through effort, ritual, and ingenuity, would you appreciate heat more than you do today? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. For more videos like this, click on this next card on your screen.